We tend to spend a lot of time in music theory classes realizing figured bass. This is a good way of dealing with chord inversions and practicing voice leading, but it doesn't really give us much of an insight into the relationship between harmony and melody. I think that most of my teachers in the mid 20th century spent so much time on figured bass because they believed that the relationship between melody and harmony was shaped by harmony. Here's what Walter Piston wrote: "The process of creating melody is hardly to be separated from that of creating harmony. Not only is it extremely rare that a composer first writes a melodic phrase without reference to its harmonic background, but melodies are most commonly derived from harmonic patterns chosen in advance." Piston does admit later that this is not always the case. In my experience, harmony is not inherent in melody. This means that any given melody will have not just one correct harmonization, but many different yet effective ones. Johann Kirnberger held a similar opinion. In his book, The Art of Strict Composition in Music, he demonstrated this by creating 26 different harmonizations of a single chorale melody. Here's the first part of the melody used by Kirnberger. Kirnberger's first setting is in B-flat major. It's relatively simple, using only diatonic chords and secondary dominants. The second setting includes seventh chords and a secondary fully diminished 7 of 5. Kirnberger also changes the first two cadences. He changes the half cadence that he used as the first cadence in the first setting to an imperfect authentic cadence in the second setting. The second cadence in the first setting is an authentic cadence, which becomes a deceptive cadence in the second setting. The third setting goes even further afield. Kirnberger sets this one in the key of D minor rather than B-flat major. Here the first chord's no longer tonic, but a 6. The second cadence harmonizes the melody note B-flat. This can't make a convincing cadence in D minor, so Kirnberger solves this problem by making a quick modulation to G minor. Let's skip down to number 14. This one's back in B-flat major. The first pitch of the melody is tonic, which seems like it should be part of a tonic triad, but Kirnberger harmonizes it here as the 7th of a 5/7 of 5 chord. Number 20 is interesting not because of its actual harmony, but because of its texture. Here Kirnberger chooses not to harmonize the first two notes at all. When the other voices enter, it's with a dissonance that resolves on the following beat. Notice that Kirnberger has created a descending scale in the bass. This is an important characteristic of this setting. I believe that this bass line pattern is more important to the sound of this setting than the actual harmonic progression itself. As we saw in Kirnberger's third setting, the composer has a choice of mode as well as harmony. Kirnberger demonstrates this in a different part of his book. In this example, he harmonizes a hymn tune in both G major and in E Phrygian. It's important to note that either mode can be expressed without adding accidentals to the melody itself. Kirnberger's second setting in G major is fairly straightforward. Most of the cadences fall easily into the key. The one exception is the penultimate one. The melody has an A, which could work as a fifth of a dominant chord to form a half cadence. This is preceded by a G sharp, which Kirnberger uses as a secondary leading tone, leading to an A minor chord instead. The first setting is in Phrygian and contains quite a few G sharps, which are used as Picardy thirds. These turn tonic minor triads into major ones. While this may seem odd to us, it's typical of Phrygian writing in Kirnberger's day. He also uses a number of G sharps and F sharps to create major dominants. This indicates that Kirnberger is treating Phrygian much like melodic minor, raising pitches by a half step when it suits his progression. Notice also that there are no authentic cadences. The two cadences on tonic are accomplished via an A minor chord, which is a subdominant, thus producing a minor plagal cadence. While Kirnberger suggests that there are multiple ways to harmonize a melody, he doesn't hide his opinion that one method is better than the other. He writes, "The old modes have a greater variety of harmony and modulations than the newer style permits in such simple hymns, where generally the dominant and subdominant chords are used. Anyone who does not find the first harmonization, meaning the one in Phrygian, expressive and admirable, but the second, the one in G major, utterly insipid and disgusting, must not have the slightest sensitivity. I can also state that the finest of the more recent composers, J.S. Bach, considered the technique of composing in the old church modes to be necessary." Since Kirnberger brought it up, it might be a good idea to look at how J.S. Bach actually set a hymn tune melody. Here's Bach's setting of Christus sehr unselig macht from the St. John Passion. Bach's setting is in E Phrygian. This means that Bach cannot stick to the diatonic pitches if he's going to produce anything resembling a common practice chord progression. Since Bach can't change any pitches of the melody, he's forced to use chromatics in the other voices to create tonal progressions. There are so many chromatics that it's hard to see what's going on. I suggest looking at the cadences. These cadence points should have some meaning in some key. They should at least be standard cadences. The cadences on E major chords make sense as cadences ending on tonic with a Picardy third. They are all minor 7 to 1 or minor 4 to 1. This is what Kirnberger would have expected. He wrote that the Phrygian mode closes through the chord of the subdominant to the tonic with a major third, or also through the chord of a second below the tonic or its first inversion. That explains some cadences, but still leaves us with others that don't work in the key of E. The third cadence ends on A and is plagal, so it's not in E, it's in A minor. The next one has a diminished 7 to a minor 1, also in A minor. The following cadence could be plagal in D or a half cadence in G minor. My vote is for G minor, since the cadence is followed by a passage with prominent B flats and E flats, and because the next cadence ends nicely in G. Following that, it looks like we're back in A minor for another plagal, then finally back to E for a 7 to 1 in E minor, with a kind of Amen plagal cadence tag at the end. All of this modulating is somewhat dizzying. Some of it's necessary to maintain tonal chord progressions and tonal cadences. This is true in measure 10, with the melody cadences on an A. I can't think of a way that Bach could have created a standard cadence in E at that point. Other cadences could easily have been created in the tonic key, but they weren't. The third cadence is a good example of this. At this point, Bach's modulated to A, where he could have easily created a 7 to 1 cadence in E Phrygian. So why has Bach created so many modulations in his setting of this tune? One reason is to keep the melody in Phrygian while at the same time maintaining tonal chord function. But I think this isn't the only reason. I think he's also creating dramatic chromatic effects through modulation. Of course, Bach could have saved himself a lot of trouble by simply harmonizing the tune in C major. This works easily except for a two measure section in the middle that looks to me like A minor. This is a lot like the example that Kirnberger called insipid and disgusting. Those are harsh words, but I think that Kirnberger's right. Bach's insistence on making the harmonization fit the original mode really does improve his setting. Bach's 18th century practice of using functional chords under modal melodies is not the only way to harmonize modal melodies. We'll talk about alternatives next time.